Keith trudged up the stairs to his apartment, each step a reminder of how exhausted he was. The city had grown quiet, its usual cacophony muted into a whisper. Street lamps flickered lazily as he fumbled with his keys, the familiar sound of metal against metal, the only thing breaking the silence. Inside, the apartment was exactly as he'd left it, modest, lived in, and mercifully peaceful. He kicked off his shoes by the door, letting them land haphazardly near the welcome mat he'd meant to replace months ago. The soft hum of the ceiling fan greeted him as he made his way to the kitchen, grabbing a cold bottle of water from the refrigerator. He'd been looking forward to this all day, nothing but him, his couch, and mindless scrolling through his phone until sleep claimed him. The knock came just as he settled onto the couch, causing him to jump and nearly spill his water. Who could possibly be visiting at this hour? He glanced at his phone, 11:47 p.m. Maybe a neighbor locked themselves out again? It had happened before with old Mrs. Thompson next door. Keith approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. What he saw made him blink several times, certain his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. Standing in the hallway was a figure that couldn't possibly be real, a young woman with skin that shifted from lavender to a soft periwinkle, dressed in what appeared to be a flowing cloak that changed colors with each subtle movement. "Hello," Keith called through the door, his voice wavering. "Please, may I come in?" The response was gentle, musical even, but carried an undertone of uncertainty. Against every logical instinct, Keith found himself turning the lock and opening the door. The being before him was indeed female in appearance, with large, luminous eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies within them. Her cloak rippled like liquid starlight, and her lavender skin gave off a faint, celestial glow. "May I sleep beside you tonight, human?" she asked, her words careful and deliberate, as if she'd practiced them many times. Keith stared, mouth slightly agape. "I'm sorry, what?" "I require a place to rest," she explained, clutching the edges of her cloak. "I have observed your species. You seek comfort in proximity when you sleep. I wish to understand this, to experience it. Are you from another planet?" Keith managed to ask, still processing the surreal situation. The woman nodded. "I am called Megan. I have been studying human culture. Tonight, I find myself without shelter, and I thought perhaps I might learn more about your ways of finding comfort." Keith looked up and down the empty hallway, half expecting cameramen to jump out and reveal this was some elaborate prank. When nothing happened, he focused back on Megan. Her eyes, so impossibly bright, held a vulnerability that seemed genuinely alien to any deception. "I don't know what to do here," Keith admitted, running a hand through his hair. You're frightening," Megan supplied, her voice growing smaller. "No," Keith said quickly, surprised by his own answer. "Unexpected. Very, very unexpected." They stood there for a long moment, the hallway clock ticking audibly in the background. Finally, Keith stepped aside. "Come in, but I need to understand what's happening here." Megan entered with graceful steps, her cloak barely making a sound as she moved. Her eyes darted around the apartment, taking in every detail with what appeared to be intense curiosity. Keith closed the door behind her, the click of the lock making the situation feel more real somehow. "So," Keith began, gesturing awkwardly to his small living room. "You want to sleep beside me?" Megan nodded, her skin shifting to a slightly warmer shade of purple. "I have read about human sleeping customs. The practice of sharing sleep space creates bonds, provides security, and generates warmth. On my world, we absorb energy differently. I wish to understand your way." Keith sat down on the couch, motioning for Megan to join him. She hesitated before perching on the edge of a chair across from him, her posture perfectly straight and unnaturally still. "Where exactly are you from?" Keith asked, leaning forward. "What you would call the Andromeda Galaxy. My people are explorers, researchers. We study civilizations to better understand the universe's diversity. And you came all this way to learn about sleeping." Megan's skin darkened slightly. "Not just sleeping. Connection. I have observed from a distance, but true understanding requires participation. When I found myself stranded tonight, I remembered your address from my observations. Keith felt a chill run down his spine. You've been watching me? Not you specifically, Megan clarified quickly. This neighborhood, these buildings. I study patterns of human behavior. You seem kind, gentle. I hoped you would understand. The initial shock was beginning to wear off, replaced by curiosity and a strange sense of responsibility. This person was alone in a foreign world, seeking something as simple as a safe place to rest. Look, Keith said, standing up. This is all very strange, but I'm not going to turn you away. Let me show you the bedroom. We can figure this out. He led her down the short hallway to his bedroom, flicking on the light to reveal a moderately messy space. The double bed dominated the room, covered in a navy blue comforter and several mismatched pillows. This is where you sleep? Megan asked, approaching the bed cautiously. Yeah, this is it. Nothing fancy. Megan reached out and touched the comforter, her fingers running over the fabric. Soft, she observed. Why do you use this covering? It keeps me warm. And the pillows, Keith pointed, support my head and neck while I sleep. Megan picked up a pillow, examining it with fascination. Your bodies require specific positioning for rest. Well, it's more comfortable that way, Keith explained, watching as she continued to explore the bedding with childlike wonder. And these, she gestured to the sheets. Those go between us and the mattress. They're easier to clean than the whole mattress, and they feel nice against the skin. Megan sat on the edge of the bed, bouncing slightly to test its give. Everything is designed for comfort, she mused. Pretty much. Look, I usually wear pajamas to bed. Do you need anything to change into? Though I'm not sure what would fit you. Megan shook her head. My cloak adjusts to my needs. May I ask, what is the purpose of sharing this space with another? Keith sat down in the chair by his desk, considering the question. Lots of reasons. Sometimes it's for warmth, sometimes for security. Couples share beds for intimacy. Even just having someone nearby can make you feel less alone. Less alone, Megan repeated softly. I understand loneliness. Is that why you came here tonight? Because you felt alone? Megan's skin pulsed with a gentle blue light. Perhaps. My kind typically recharges in isolation, drawing energy from our surroundings. But I watch humans seek each other out, touch, embrace. I wanted to know what that felt like. Keith found himself moved by her honesty. It's getting late. Should we try this sleeping arrangement? Megan nodded, standing up. She removed her cloak, revealing a simple, form-fitting garment beneath that seemed to be made of the same color-shifting material. Without the cloak, she appeared more vulnerable, more human despite her alien features. Which side do you prefer? Keith asked, pulling back the covers. I have no preference. Where would a guest typically sleep? Usually the right side, I guess. I'll take the left. They both climbed into bed, keeping a respectful distance between them. Keith switched off the bedside lamp, plunging the room into darkness, save for the gentle glow emanating from Megan's skin. This is strange, Keith whispered into the darkness. For me as well, Megan replied, but not unpleasant. How do your people usually rest? We enter a meditative state, usually in specially designed chambers that regulate our energy absorption. It's efficient but solitary. Keith turned onto his side, facing her silhouette in the darkness. And how does this compare? It's warmer, both physically and in a way I cannot adequately describe. I can sense your presence, your breathing, your heartbeat. It creates a rhythm I've never experienced before. That's kind of what it's about, Keith said. Knowing someone else is there, sharing the same space. It makes the world feel a little less big and scary. Do you often share your sleeping space? Megan asked. Keith chuckled softly. Not lately. Work keeps me busy, and it's been a while since I've had someone special enough to share it with. Special, Megan repeated. What makes someone special? Trust, I suppose. When you sleep, you're vulnerable. You have to trust the person next to you completely. Megan was quiet for a moment. You trust me? Even though we've just met. Keith considered this. I think I do. You came here openly, honestly. You could have done anything else, but you just wanted to understand something about being human. That counts for something. May I move closer? Megan asked hesitantly. I wish to experience what you described, the comfort of proximity. Sure, Keith replied, feeling his heart rate increase slightly. Megan shifted closer, stopping about a foot away from him. Is this appropriate? That's fine. Whatever feels comfortable to you. Your culture has many rules about physical contact, Megan observed. I've seen this in my studies. Yeah, we do. But sometimes rules are just guidelines. What matters is what feels right for the people involved. I feel safe, Megan said after a while. Is that normal? That's exactly what you should feel, Keith assured her. That's what makes sharing a bed special. The room fell silent except for their breathing. Keith found himself acutely aware of Megan's presence, the slight illumination from her skin creating a soft ambient light that reminded him of moonlight through curtains. Keith. Megan's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes. Why did you let me in? You didn't know me. I could have been dangerous. Keith thought about this. I'm not really sure. Something in your eyes. Maybe. You look like you needed help. And I've always believed that if you can help someone, you should. That's not a universal trait among your species, Megan noted. No, it's not. But it should be. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, making Megan start slightly. Just the wind, Keith said reassuringly. These old buildings make all sorts of noises at night. On my world, we have no wind, Megan said. No weather at all. Everything is controlled, regulated. Sounds peaceful, but maybe a little boring. I never thought so until I came here. Your world is chaotic but vibrant. Everything moves, changes, grows. Including us, Keith said. Humans, I mean. We're always changing, adapting. That's what brought me to study your species, Megan admitted. Your capacity for growth, for connection. You form bonds so easily, even with strangers. Like we're doing now. Megan's skin brightened slightly. Yes, like we're doing now. They continued talking softly in the darkness, sharing stories and observations. Megan explained more about her world, a place of crystal cities and energy fields, where individuality was prized but physical connection was rare. Keith told her about growing up on Earth, about the importance of family, friends, and the simple comfort of human touch. As the night wore on, the initial awkwardness faded. Megan gradually moved closer until they were lying side by side, shoulders nearly touching. Keith pulled the blanket up to cover them both, explaining how shared warmth was part of the sleeping experience. This covering traps our heat, Megan asked, running her hand over the blanket. Exactly. It keeps us warm through the night. I generate my own heat, Megan said, but I understand the principle. Sharing resources for mutual benefit. That's one way to look at it. It's also just nice to be cozy. Megan turned on her side, facing Keith. May I try something I've observed? What's that? Humans sometimes hold each other while sleeping. May I? Keith felt his breath catch. If you'd like to. Slowly, carefully, Megan moved closer until her head rested against Keith's shoulder. Her skin was warm, almost like sunlight, and carried a faint scent reminiscent of ozone after a lightning storm. Is this correct? She asked. Keith gently placed his arm around her shoulders. This is perfect. I understand now, Megan whispered. This feeling, it's more than physical warmth. It's connection, security, trust. That's exactly it. Keith agreed, feeling a strange sense of pride that she was experiencing this fundamental human comfort. Your heartbeat, Megan observed. I can feel it. It's like a drum keeping time. Does that bother you? No. It's soothing, like waves on a shore. They lay there in comfortable silence, the city's sounds outside providing a distant backdrop to their shared moment. Keith found himself marveling at how natural it felt to have this alien being in his arms, how the strangeness of the situation had given way to something simple and pure. Keith. Megan's voice was growing drowsy. Yes. Thank you for teaching me about sleep, about comfort, about trust. Thank you for trusting me enough to learn. Megan's skin dimmed slightly, her breathing becoming slower and more regular. Keith realized she was actually falling asleep, perhaps experiencing it for the first time in the human sense of the word. As he drifted off himself, Keith wondered about the nature of connection. Here he was, sharing his bed with a being from another galaxy, and yet it felt more genuine than many relationships he'd had with fellow humans. Maybe connection wasn't about where you came from, but about the willingness to be vulnerable, to reach out, to trust. He awoke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Megan was already up, standing by the window with his spare mug in her hands, watching the morning traffic below. "Good morning," she said, turning to him with a smile that seemed to light up the room. "I made coffee. I read it's a customary morning beverage." Keith sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You figure out my coffee maker?" It wasn't difficult, though I'm not certain I prepared it correctly. He took the offered mug and sipped. It was surprisingly good, if a bit strong. "This is perfect. How did you sleep?" "I experienced something I can only describe as dreaming," Megan said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Images, sensations, emotions all blending together. "Is this normal?" "Very normal. That's what dreaming is all about." It was wonderful. "I understand now why humans value sleep so highly. It's not just rest, it's an experience." Keith smiled, setting his coffee on the nightstand. "So what happens now? Do you have to go back to your people?" Megan's skin shifted to a thoughtful shade of blue. "Eventually, but I've received permission to extend my study. There's so much more I want to learn about human connection." "Well," Keith said, stretching, "you're welcome to stay as long as you need. Though maybe we should establish some ground rules about unexpected visits." Megan laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Agreed. Though I must say, this unexpected visit led to something quite extraordinary." "It really did," Keith agreed, looking at her with newfound appreciation. Who would have thought that a simple request to sleep beside someone could lead to such understanding? "Perhaps that's the nature of true connection," Megan mused. "It begins with vulnerability, with asking for what we need, and being willing to provide it," Keith added. They shared breakfast, talking about the day ahead and the possibility of more cultural exchanges. Keith called in sick to work, deciding that some experiences were worth breaking routine for. They spent the day exploring the city through Megan's eyes, seeing familiar places anew through her wonder and curiosity. As evening approached again, they found themselves back in Keith's apartment, comfortable in each other's presence in a way that seemed impossible just 24 hours before. "Would you like to stay again tonight?" Keith asked as they prepared dinner together. Megan's skin glowed warmly. "I would like that very much. But this time, I'll knock earlier in the evening." "Deal," Keith laughed. "Though you know you don't have to knock anymore. You're welcome here." That night, as they settled into bed again, there was no hesitation, no awkwardness. Megan curled up against Keith's side as naturally as if they'd been doing it for years, her skin pulsing gently with contentment. "I've learned something important," Megan said softly as sleep began to claim them both. "What's that?" "Home isn't a place. It's a feeling, a connection, and sometimes you find it in the most unexpected places." Keith pulled her closer, marveling at the truth in her words. "Sometimes you do." As they drifted off to sleep, two beings from different worlds sharing the simple comfort of each other's presence, Keith realized that perhaps the most profound connections were the ones that transcended all boundaries. In the quiet darkness of his room, with an alien's gentle breathing matching his own, he understood that comfort, trust, and companionship were truly universal needs. The next morning brought new adventures and deeper understanding. Megan continued her studies of human culture, but now with a personal guide who was as eager to learn about her world as she was about his. They explored museums, parks, and cafes, each experience enriched by their unique perspectives. Over the following weeks, their bond deepened. Megan learned about human emotions in all their complexity, while Keith discovered new ways of seeing his own world through her extraordinary eyes. She taught him about the energy fields of her planet, demonstrating how her people communicated through light and color. He introduced her to the messy beauty of human relationships, the joy of shared laughter, and the comfort of silent understanding. One evening, as they sat on Keith's balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded Megan of home, she turned to him with a serious expression. "My time here is coming to an end," she said softly. "My people have called me back." Keith felt his heart sink, though he'd known this moment would come. When do you leave? In 3 days. But Keith, I want you to know something important. What's that? This experience, sharing sleep with you, learning about human connection, it's changed me fundamentally. My people will want to know what I've learned, and I'll tell them that the most important thing isn't the customs or the culture. It's the capacity for two beings, no matter how different, to find common ground in simple acts of trust and kindness. Keith took her hand, her skin warm and slightly luminescent in the fading light. You've changed me too. You've shown me that connection doesn't require sameness. It just requires openness. The next 3 days were bittersweet. They made the most of every moment, creating memories that would sustain them both across the vast distances that would soon separate them. On the final night, they lay in bed as they had that first night, but now with the weight of impending separation hanging over them. Will I ever see you again? Keith asked, his voice thick with emotion. The universe is vast, but not infinite, Megan replied, her skin pulsing with soft blue light. And connections like ours have a way of defying distance. Besides, I put in a request to return as an official cultural liaison. My people were very interested in my report on human sleeping customs. Keith laughed despite his sadness. So this might not be goodbye. In my culture, we don't say goodbye. We say until the stars align again. Until the stars align again, Keith repeated, pulling her close. They held each other through the night, neither sleeping much but finding comfort in their shared warmth. When morning came, Megan rose early, dressing in her traveling cloak that shimmered with all the colors of dawn. Thank you, she said, touching Keith's cheek gently, for teaching me that the greatest journeys sometimes happen in the smallest spaces. Thank you for showing me that home is wherever hearts connect, Keith replied. With a final embrace, Megan stepped back, her form beginning to shimmer with transported energy. Remember, she said as she began to fade, whenever you look at the stars, know that somewhere out there, someone is thinking of you and the warmth you shared. And then she was gone, leaving Keith alone in his apartment that suddenly felt too large and too empty. But as he made his morning coffee, he smiled, knowing that somewhere in the vast cosmos, an alien was telling her people about the profound comfort of sleeping beside someone you trust. Months passed, and life returned to its normal rhythm, though Keith never forgot his extraordinary visitor. He found himself more open to connections, more willing to trust, more aware of the small moments of comfort in daily life. Then one night, as winter's chill settled over the city, there came a familiar knock at his door. Keith's heart leaped as he opened it to find Megan standing there, her lavender skin glowing with warmth, her cloak shimmering with starlight. The stars have aligned again, she said simply. Keith pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling the familiar warmth of her skin, the gentle pulse of her alien heartbeat. Welcome home, he whispered, and as they settled once more into the simple comfort of shared sleep, Keith realized that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures begin with the simplest question. May I sleep beside you tonight, human? In that moment, wrapped in blankets and starlight, two beings from different worlds proved that comfort, trust, and connection truly know no boundaries. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, celebrating the reunion of two souls who had found home in each other's presence.